Good morning, Damien.
Phelan, we won't ask you about the Pact at Waterford Council, will we?
No, it could be a bit beyond me now.
Listen, you're a global market specialist with the Irish Farmers Journal. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. There's a story which has broken in the last, 24 hours, but it's part of an ongoing major investigation into horse meat being unfit for human consumption, entering the international food chain. Tell us about this story.
I suppose horse meat's very much in our minds, and probably goes back to the issue in 2013, whenever fraudulently horse meat would have turned up in product that was supposed to be beef, particularly in burgers and pies, etc. Major story at the time in 2013. This one is actually quite different because, when we think about it, look, farmers, people don't produce horses as a means of meat, of protein. But whenever horses have finished their breeding cycles, whenever they finish racing or jumping or whatever, there is a value in them. And horse meat is particularly popular in mainland Europe. I suppose France and Belgium in particular.
Did you ever try it yourself?
I did, yes. I would cover the Brussels beet for the Farmers Journal, and I've had it. And to be quite honest, if you didn't tell me what it was, I wouldn't really have passed. It would pass off almost. It's like comparing, I suppose, beef and lamb. If you're a connoisseur of food, you'll probably pick up the difference. If you're just looking at it, I suppose, as a refueling experience, you'll eat on and not really take much heat. But look, the reality of life is Ireland has a small horse meat processing industry. Last year, for example, we had about 6,500 horses were processed and sold mainly on the continent. I'll not say there's no market in Ireland. There's probably the one or two examples. If your listeners maybe will know someone that has experienced it or eaten it or has had some of it here, but it's not a mainstream meat, just the same as veal isn't, in terms of production from cows. But what's happened this time round, and what's different from 2013, this is an issue in the processing of horse meat itself, in terms of the identification. Horses, I suppose, every horse has a passport, which is a very detailed document, giving a descriptor of the animal, giving pictures, any particular marks, etc. And what the Gardaí are investigating in this case is, has there been adulteration or tampering with this identification? Why would that happen? It would be so that horses, and again, in terms of any product entering the food chain, there's very strict regulations in terms of withdrawal period and medicines. There's some medicines, for example, phenylbutazone, or better known as bute, that's used for the treatment of injuries, particularly inflammatory injuries. It's not used for humans. And if it's used in an animal, then that animal cannot enter the food chain. Now, horses, by the very nature of what they're involved in terms of jumping, running, racing, they will pick up perhaps more of these sort of inflammatory type injuries than cattle would, for example. And vets, in terms of giving the animal welfare the priority, vets will use that on occasion. If that is done, that animal can never enter the food chain. It's recorded as part of its medical record and its passport. And what Gardaí are investigating is, has there been horses that have had their identity tampered with and have been presented for the food chain when in fact they shouldn't have been? That is the basis of this story, and it's very much part of an ongoing criminal investigation, and something that is, I suppose, quite different from the story of 2013, which was really basically about fraud as opposed to actual putting animals into the food chain that shouldn't be in the food chain.
Yeah, because we've had raids, like the Guards have had raids on several farms in several counties, including Kilkenny, Roscommon, Leitrim, Sligo and Westmeath. So if the Gardaí go into a particular farm, what are they looking for? Are they looking for documentation? Are they looking for horses themselves with passports? What would they be looking for?
Yeah, no. What they will be looking for, I suppose, is falsification of records and the means to falsify records. Now, again, in addition to the passport, there's a microchipping process. And again, we understand that the Gardaí have become aware of the existence of microchips that could be, I suppose, used as an alternative to the legitimate one that is issued in the original and proper registration process of the animal. So the manoeuvre, if you like, or the fraudulent or criminal manoeuvre, in fact, would be the case of trying to import and bring in alternative microchips to give the animal a different identity that probably masks the treatment that it's had in terms of the drugs that's been administered to it during its life, and perhaps presenting and going forward to the food chain when in fact it shouldn't. That's what the Gardaí would be out, and they're in the middle of the investigation now. Obviously, it's a fairly wide-ranging one. It's one that's been ongoing for some time, and the fact that there's a serious Gardaí team on it, I think it reflects the fact that, I suppose, anything to do with the Irish food industry, and whilst look, the horse meat processing industry, 6,500 last year, we processed 1.8 million cattle. It's a negligible amount, but in terms of international reputation, Ireland would have very much a zero tolerance policy when it comes to anything that might impact negatively on the sector. And I suppose this is why the Gardaí have went into this, and the other state authorities, the Food Safety Authority, etc., are very much all part of that.
Absolutely. Phelim O'Neill, thanks very much for talking to us this morning. We will talk again about this at some stage in the future. You listen to Phelim O'Neill, Global Market Specialist with the Irish Farmers Journal.